Right, and now to analyze this whole tragedy further, I'm delighted to welcome two guests here with us today. Mr. Jakub Katulski, a journalist, and Irina Tsukerman, editor-in-chief of the Washington Outsider. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you so much.
So I would like to start, since you already mentioned, Sasha, about this exclusive interview that was given to us in this very studio to our friends Don and Marie earlier today by the ambassador of Israel to Poland. I would like to take a moment to have a quick look at a tweet which he posted earlier yesterday.
And on that tweet right now, we can see that. I mean, he did release that in Polish, but at the same time, we can see the translation. Now, essentially, if we read that out quickly, paraphrase that, Poland's far right and far left are accusing Israel of premeditated murder in yesterday's attack that killed members of a humanitarian organization, including a Polish citizen. The deputy speaker of the Sejm and leader of the Confederation Party, Krzysztof Bosak, claims that Israel is committing war crimes and terrorizing humanitarian organizations in order to starve Palestinians. It just goes on there, and it ends with, bottom line, anti-Semites will always be anti-Semites, and Israel will always be a democratic Jewish state fighting for its right to exist, also for the sake of the entire Western world. Now, he did release that yesterday.
He did release that yesterday. It's a bit of a lengthy post, but let's take a look at what he had to say during the interview, the exclusive interview for TVP World today in the studio.
We express deep regret over what has happened in Gaza, and I would also like personally to offer our condolences, my own condolences, to the tragic death of the 7 members of the organization.
Mr. Katulski, this first question is going to be for you. When we look at this tweet and when we look at what was said earlier today, these two stances seem to be dramatically different. What do you think made the Israeli ambassador actually change his mind relatively fast, considering that the tweet was posted yesterday and we had this very interview take place today?
Actually, if you look at different instances where the ambassador spoke today or yesterday, it seems kind of coherent. He says that it's through the eyes of the Israeli administration, this is an incident. It's not intentional, and that Israel needs to protect themselves from not only the terrorists in Gaza Strip, but also from attacks from far right and far left in Poland and other Western countries. So in my opinion, it doesn't really differ. The stance that the ambassador takes is more or less the same yesterday and today. And we'll see in the upcoming days if it changes. However, we already heard from the ambassador that he rejects some demands from the Polish side, mainly the demand for cooperation and creation international, multinational investigation into the incident. In contrary, he says that they will deliver the results of the Israeli own investigation to the Polish side, despite the fact that Foreign Minister Sikorski explicitly demanded international investigation and cooperation with Polish prosecutor's office. And we have to explicitly say that the prosecutor's office started their investigation today, and they're not investigating manslaughter, but deliberate murder with the use of explosive devices.
Well, I'm going to follow up on that with you, Irina. I mean, we looked at this tragic incident. Of course, it is a tragedy for many sides since October 7th. We have to remember that. But nevertheless, if we look at this incident from the last couple of days, the manner of the information we're getting, the strikes, I mean, this was very much a targeted strike. We're hearing that this happened not once, but twice, but there were 3 different strikes coordinated on this. And also what I wonder, I mean, we know from different sources that World Central Kitchen coordinated on the highest level with the IDF to know exactly where their whereabouts were, that the route was secure, that this was verified. So given all this is what has happened, and no matter how you look at the optics here, Can we really be guaranteed accountability by the IDF in this?
Oh, the question is for me?
That's correct. Yeah, that was for you.
Yes, thank you so much. IDF has a long record of very thorough, very swift investigations into any suspected malfeasance or any incidents of the same sort in the past. So there's no doubt that they will continue to do so in the future. It's certainly not in Israel's interest to exacerbate any tensions with any of its close friends and allies. It's certainly, I cannot imagine a circumstance where anyone at the highest level of IDF would give an order to target a humanitarian aid, a well-known and respected humanitarian aid vehicle. And certainly I cannot imagine a circumstance where Israel would try to sweep under the rug any sort of deliberate or reckless endangerment of human lives due to the record of the way they have tried to minimize civilian casualties during the entire course of the war. It is unfortunate reality that humanitarian aid workers in conflict zones are working in an extremely dangerous profession. Unfortunately, accidents and mistakes happen.
With all due respect, but we know that the IDF, the country's military, claims to be one of the world's most disciplined and moral armies. We know that the route was prearranged, and now we're hearing voices from the Israeli officials responding to the officials of other countries where these victims were from, saying that they're not going to get their way in terms of the investigation. I mean, this only begs the question, like, what is really happening this very moment? Because not only we're looking at, humanitarian aid workers being killed from different countries from around the globe. I mean, but some time ago, we had Israeli hostages who were gunned down as they were waving white flags and speaking in Hebrew. So there is something definitely going on wrong. So how do you think this should be addressed? Because I have a feeling, and I think a lot of people share the same feeling, that something more should be done in order to address these concerns.
The best thing that can be done is for every investigation that the IDF undertakes is to be transparent and clear. I have no doubt that will be the case with the earlier incident you described.
How is it going to be transparent? What are going to be the mechanisms in place in order to provide full transparency on an international stage?
Well, I'm sure IDF will be looking at the ballistics and the other military information. It will be looking at satellite imagery that I think will likely be shared with the public. It will also be looking at the chain of custody in terms of the orders given, who was in charge of that particular operation, what was the level of communication, and with whom. The very likely reason why Israel cannot comply with the international investigation in this or for that matter many other instances under such circumstances is for simple reason of basic security. Besides that particular incident, Israel was involved in a number of military operations simultaneously, and having an international team coordinate on every aspect of communications would unfortunately reveal sensitive data that needs to be compartmentalized.
I mean, we're talking about an aspect of military security. Meanwhile, we have humanitarian aid workers from other countries working day in and day out to provide food and humanitarian aid for civilians, and they are not provided basic security.
Yeah, I mean, it is a tense situation, and I think accountability, that's going to be a tough one to get, I think, in terms of fairness, but we'll have to wait, unfortunately, until we see that. I want to get back to another point here. Jakub, we've had very strong words from Mr. Sikorski as well. We also have a tweet here recently from Prime Minister Donald Tusk, which I think our viewers can see on our screen right now, very much saying that, addressing Mr. Netanyahu directly, and also Ambassador Livne, that the vast majority of Poles showed full solidarity with Israel after the Hamas attack. Today, you're putting the solidarity to the test. The tragic attack on the volunteers and your response are causing understandable anger. What has this incident done to Polish and Israeli relations, Jakub?
For sure, the incident has strained the relations, which were maybe good, but not easy or difficult. You could say, as Prime Minister Sikorski has already said. But to further our relations, it would be hard to gain trust between the governments if Israel doesn't comply with the demands of our Ministry of Foreign Affairs to give access for our investigators to work together with Israeli investigators. Has been stressed many times over the course of the last 2 days. However, in the case when a Polish citizen dies in a military operation by Israeli army, Polish investigators should be able to conduct their own investigation with the cooperation of the Israeli army on the ground. In the other way, it gives a vibe of insincerity. It might be convincible for Israelis to convince the government. However, it will be hard to spin it to the Polish public, which is outraged right now, as you can see especially in the tweets in social media, that Polish citizens demand compliance with international law, and they see the death of the humanitarian workers as a blatant violation of international humanitarian law, which extends its protection over the humanitarian workers. And we need to stress that other Polish humanitarian organizations working in Gaza right now, such as Polish medical missions, stress that already 200 humanitarian workers died over the course of the last escalation since October 7th, and probably more will perish in the conflict. So it would be crucial to cooperate with international investigators. It might even strain Israeli relations with the West further, especially with the countries whose citizens died in the last few days.
I would like to stay on the subject of international response and the question that you just asked, Mr. Katulski. Ms. Tsukerman, this question is for you. So we looked at the Polish-Israeli relationship after the tragedy that took place yesterday. There was also a response from President Joe Biden where he condemned the actions of the IDF. And I wonder, how does that play into the whole relationship between the U.S. and Israel, especially now that things don't seem to be going that well when it comes to this relationship in particular?
Israel is very deeply appreciative of the crucial assistance provided by the United States and by President Joe Biden in the aftermath of October 7th, and that continues to this day. I think it's understandable that the United States would have concerns when any of its citizens die in the course of military actions, just as it is understandable that Poland and its government and its people would have the concerns for the lives of their citizens. That said, I think it is premature to condemn actions by IDF without understanding the full picture of what happened and how the strategy has occurred. I have no doubt, once again, that IDF will prepare a full and transparent report that it will share with the leaders of these countries. And I don't think it is helpful to attack an ally in public in such a way over an incident which clearly did not, very clearly there was no intent of exacerbating tensions, creating divides, or hurting or insulting either those citizens or the countries themselves. I think implications that there's any sort of deliberate ulterior motive to anything that transpired plays into the hands of radical factions that the ambassador condemned in his previous tweet. I'm sure that there is a balance for the leaders of these countries, including President Biden, to balance their efforts in and interests of different groups and different
All right,
citizens.
but on that
President
note, we'll
Biden
have
is
to
under pressure.
unfortunately close it there. And it was also, I want to add that Biden was outraged and heartbroken, but at the same time, still, that partnership with Israel continues in weapons shipments. But at the same time, I think the point we were trying to make here is that the first response very much on the tweet by the ambassador was one of criticism, and then only later was there an apology. So that's
I hope we can have a later dialogue, and as it goes for the TVP World team, we're definitely are going to keep our hand on the pulse, and we will be reporting more on the investigation that is going to follow. Thank you so much. Mr. Katulski, Ms. Tsukerman, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.